part of the process for working with markers this way is I want you guys to come up with your own shapes, your own designs, okay? They don't always have to be letter shapes, okay? I want you to think abstractly. I want you to come up with your own ideas. And to develop these kinds of ideas, a good way to begin is with using thin lines, okay? Not just the fat markers, but also using thin lines like this, okay? So to start off with, I will use usually a pencil or a ballpoint pen, and I'll come up with ideas for strokes. I'll think about movements. I'll think about gestures. I'll think about how I want things to cross over, how I want things to move. If there's a beginning or an end, think about that kind of idea. Okay, so for this part of the assignment, I want you guys to use a pencil, and I want you to start coming up with your own ideas. So a good way to begin is to think about the @ symbol, okay? So the @ symbol has sort of a letter A in the middle, and then it has this roundy stroke. So then, instead of putting an A in the middle, maybe you put, a zigzaggy kind of loop in the middle, or maybe you put a letter Z, maybe like a $sign, and then a loop. This is a good way to begin doing this kind of, kind of a linear gesture. Okay. Now, after a certain point, you may abandon that. Okay. Think about drawing a 5-pointed star. Okay. This is a quick gestural stroke that you probably have done before. So try this kind of thing, and then instead of completing the star, do something else with it. Okay. Think about loops and squiggles. This is very much doodling, okay? Come up with different ideas quickly, okay? Don't fret too much. Sometimes they could be very simple, or sometimes they can be complex. It's sort of, there's no right or wrong formula. Just think about making those shapes dynamic. Think about incorporating the different types of curves and lines that we've been developing in this class. S curves, straight, maybe you have a straight line and then a curve. Okay, so fill up a page with these kinds of doodles using a pencil or a ballpoint pen, and very, very thin, thin lines, so that you can quickly, and easily see what you're doing using these strokes. Now that you've done some sketches and you have some ideas, I want you to graduate to the fat marker, and I want you to try some of these ideas out, okay? So think about some of these strokes, these gestures that you were just doing, and, experiment with doing them with the fat marker. Think about the thin lines, the thick lines, how are you going to put those together? Turn the marker in different ways, trying them in different angles. If you find one that you like, practice it over and over again. That's what a lot of these graffiti artists do. They're doing the same thing over and over again until they get it right. So get the stroke exactly how you want it, by practicing it a few times. Okay, but for you guys, you're also doing things to be more three-dimensional. Okay, so think about these forms in terms of dominant, subdominant, subordinate. Okay, if you have three strokes, one is dominant, subdominant, subordinate. Think in those terms when you're doing these kinds of sketches. A good exercise for working with proportions is to do 2 marker strokes. Okay, think about dominant, subdominant. Okay, now sometimes you may want to vary your shape. Instead of just having 2 rectangular shapes, maybe start to alter your shapes. Okay, think about maybe one is more curvy, one is more straight. adding that variety of shape makes things more dynamic, makes things more interesting. Okay. Now, once you've done a bunch of 2-stroke ideas, start to add in 3-stroke ideas. Okay. So dominant, subdominant, subordinate. Okay. Practice these dynamic gestures and make them interesting. Okay. How can you change direction? Think about X, Y, and Z axis, right? If it's X, Y, and Z axis, you want to vary those, right? But right now we're working flatly. But think about these things as if they're 3-dimensional objects, okay? Use those VisForm 2 skills freely, in 2 dimensions. You could do these things very quickly and easily. Something you can do to help you visualize these things as 3-dimensional objects is to use a white Posca pen and to add some highlights. Okay, so if this is a ribbon and it's 3-dimensional, this top edge will catch some highlights, right? This edge of this ribbon-like shape will catch some highlights. Okay, maybe it's not a ribbon, maybe it's more of a cylinder. Okay, so you're going to have your highlights more towards the middle. Maybe the edges here catches some highlights, right? Maybe this element is more like a rod or a tube, and you're going to add some highlights like that. Okay, adding these quick highlights can add a lot of dimension and a lot of feeling to these objects, make them look 3D. Okay, so that's another thing you can do, and try to use that same quick gestural mark making that you're doing to make the markers, that you're doing with the markers. Use that with the Posca pen as well. Okay, give that same feeling to it so that it kind of works together.